Hey, here we are, already at the last two chapters of the book of Second Samuel. And we're going to find some interesting things that we need to kind of talk about at the end. But before we get started, you're going to notice that in chapter 23, the first words are the last words of David. And these aren't the last words. This is David on his deathbed. This is kind of like David is reminiscing about his life. This is something that happens with both men and women. You get older and you start thinking about your life and how things have been and how you would have done things differently, and is it turning out the way that you expected it to be. And so we realize that life on this earth doesn't last forever. And so we wonder, did we live our life well? So when it says that these are David's last words, I think this is more like David is thinking back on his life and thinking about his relationship with God. So let's go ahead and start reading in chapter 23. These are the last words of David. David, the son of Jesse, speaks. David, the man who was raised up so high. David, the man anointed by the God of Jacob. David, the sweet psalmist of Israel. The Spirit of the Lord speaks through me. His words are upon my tongue. The God of Israel spoke, and the rock of Israel said to me, the one who rules righteously, who rules in the fear of God, is like the light of morning at sunrise, like a morning without clouds, like the gleaming of the sun on new grass after rain. Is it not my family? Is it not my family God has chosen? Yes, he has made an everlasting covenant with me. His agreement is arranged and guaranteed in every detail. He will ensure my safety and success. But the godless are like thorns to be thrown away, for they tear the hand that touches them. One must use iron tools to chop them down. They will be totally consumed by fire. These are the names of David's mightiest warriors. The first was Jashobeam, the Hachmonite, who was the leader of the three mightiest warriors among David's men. He once used his spear to kill 800 enemy warriors in a single battle. Next in rank among the three was Eleazar, son of Dodai, a descendant of Ahoai. Once Eleazar and David stood together against the Philistines when the entire Israelite army had fled. He killed Philistines until his hand was too tired to lift his sword, and the Lord gave him a great victory that day. The rest of the army did not return until it was time to collect the plunder. Next in rank is Shammah, son of Agi, from Harar. One time the Philistines gathered at Lehi and attacked the Israelites in a field full of lentils. The Israelite army fled, but Shammah held his ground in the middle of the field and beat back the Philistines, so the Lord brought about a great victory. Once during the harvest, when David was at the cave of Adullam, the Philistine army was camped in the valley of Rephaim. The three, who were among the 30, an elite group among David's fighting men, went down to meet him there. David was staying in the stronghold at the time, and the Philistine detachment had occupied the town of Bethlehem. David remarked longingly to his men, "Oh, how I would love some of that good water from the well by the gate in Bethlehem." So the three broke through the Philistine lines, drew some water from the well by the gate in Bethlehem, and brought it back to David. But he refused to drink it. Instead, he poured it out as an offering to the Lord. "The Lord forbid that I should drink this," he exclaimed. "This water is as precious as the blood of these men who risked their lives to bring it to me." So David did not drink it. These are examples of the exploits of the three. Abishai, son of Zeruiah, the brother of Joab, was the leader of the 30. He once used his spear to kill 300 enemy warriors in a single battle. It was by such feats that he became as famous as the three. Abishai was the most famous of the 30 and was their commander, though he was not one of the three. There was also Benaiah, son of Jehoiada, a valiant warrior from Kabzeel. He did many heroic deeds, which included killing 2 champions of Moab. Another time, on a snowy day, he chased a lion down into a pit and killed it. Once armed with a club, he killed an imposing Egyptian warrior who was armed with a spear. Benaiah wrenched the spear from the Egyptian's hand and killed him with it. Deeds like these made Benaiah as famous as the 3 mightiest warriors. He was more honored than the other members of the 30, though he was not one of the 3, and David made him captain of his bodyguard. Other members of the 30 include Asahel, Joab's brother, Elanahan, son of Dodo, from Bethlehem, Shammah from Herod, Elika from Herod, Helez from Pelon, Ira son of Ikish from Tekoa, Abiezer from Anoth, Sibbecai from Husha, Zalman from Ahoah, Mahara from Netopha, Heled son of Bana from Netopha, Ithai son of Ribai from Gibeah in the land of Benjamin, Benaiah from Pirathon, Hurai from Nahil Gash, Abi Albon from Arabah, Asmaveth from Bahiram, Eliba from Shelbon, the sons of Jason, Jonathan, son of Shagi from Harar, Ahim, son of Sharar from Harar, Eliphelet, son of Ahashbai from Mecca, Eliam, son of Ahithophel from Gilo, Hezro from Carmel, Parai from Arba, Egal, son of Nathan from Zobah, Bani from Gad, Zelek from Ammon, Nahari from Beroth, the armor bearer of Job, son of Zariah, Ira from Jatir, Gareb from Jatir, Uriah the Hittite. There were 37 in all. Once again, the anger of the Lord burned against Israel, and he caused David to harm them by taking a census. Go and count the people of Israel and Judah, the Lord told him. So the king said to Joab and the commanders of the army, take a census of all the tribes of Israel from Dan to the north and to Beersheba in the south, so that I may know how many people there are. But Joab replied to the king, may the Lord your God let you live to see 100 times as many people as there are now. But why, my lord, the king? Do you want to do this? But the king insisted that they take a census. So Joab and the commanders of the army went out to count the people of Israel. First they crossed the Jordan, camped at Aroer, south of the town in the valley, in the direction of Gad. Then they went on to Jazer, then to Gilead, in the land of Tithnahoshi, and to Danjan, and around to Sidon. Then they came to the fortress of Tyre, and all the towns of the Hivites and Canaanites. Finally, they went south to Judah, as far as Beersheba. Having gone through the entire land for 9 months and 20 days, they returned to Jerusalem. Joab reported the number of people to the king, and there were 800,000 capable warriors in Israel who could handle a sword, and 500,000 in Judah. But after he had taken a census, David's conscience began to bother him, and he said to the Lord, I have sinned greatly by taking the census. Please forgive my guilt, Lord, for doing this foolish thing. The next morning, the word of the Lord came to the prophet Gad, who was David's seer. This was the message. Go and say to David, this is what the Lord says. I'll give you 3 choices. Choose one of these punishments, and I will inflict it on you. So Gad came to David and asked him, will you choose 3 years of famine throughout your land, 3 years of fleeing from your enemies, or 3 days of severe plague throughout your land? Think this over and decide what answer I should give the Lord who sent me. I'm in a desperate situation, David replied to Gad. But let us fall into the hands of the Lord, for his mercy is great. Do not let me fall into human hands. So the Lord sent a plague upon Israel that morning, and it lasted for 3 days. A total of 70,000 people died throughout the nation, from Dan to the north, in the north to Beersheba in the south. But as the angel was preparing to destroy Jerusalem, the Lord relented and said to the death angel, stop, that is enough. At that moment, the angel of the Lord was by the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite. When David saw the angel, he said to the Lord, I am the one who has sinned and done wrong, but these people are innocent as sheep. What have they done? Let your anger fall against me and my family. That day Gad came to David and said to him, go up and build an altar to the Lord on the threshing floor of Araunah the Jebusite. So David went up to do what the Lord had commanded him. When Araunah saw the king and his men coming toward him, he came and bowed down before the king with his face to the ground. Why have you come, my lord the king? Araunah asked. David replied, I've come to buy your threshing floor and to build an altar to the Lord there, so that he will stop the plague. Take it, my lord the king, and use it as you wish. Araunah said to David, here are oxen for the burnt offering, and you can use the threshing boards and the ox yokes for wood to build a fire on the altar. I will give it all to you, your majesty, and may the Lord your God accept your sacrifice. But the king replied to Araunah, "No, I insist on buying it, for I will not present burnt offerings to the Lord my God that have cost me nothing." So David paid him 50 pieces of silver for the threshing floor and the oxen. David built an altar there to the Lord and sacrificed burnt offerings and peace offerings, and the Lord answered his prayer for the land, and the plague on Israel was stopped. So there's a couple of things that we need to talk about. First, at the end of chapter 23, it's easy to go over those names. It's kind of skim over the 30 great warriors of David, who had such a powerful reputation. Their names preceded them wherever they went. People were afraid of them. Other countries were afraid of them in the battle that was taking place. But if you notice, there's some interesting names. First, you have Ahithophel. If you're not paying attention, Ahithophel was David's counselor. He's the one that had David's back when Absalom tried to take advantage of David and kicked him out of Jerusalem. Ahithophel's son is mentioned as Eliam. He is the father of Bathsheba, which makes Ahithophel Bathsheba's grandfather. There is no way that David should have been looking in Bathsheba's direction. He goes behind the back of 3 people that are listed as the mightiest in David's army and took Bathsheba away from them. He still went behind their back, and they served him as a great king. That's a huge black mark on David's life. And then we come to chapter 24. And we see that the Lord is angry. But we got to ask ourselves, why in the world would the Lord be angry? What is really going on? The Jewish historian Josephus says that God is angry because David was wanting to take a census. But in First Chronicles, which we're going to read a little bit later, we're going to find that Satan is the one that gets David to do this census. See, I believe that there are times in God's sovereignty that he allows Satan to act. In fact, you could argue that there are times when God uses Satan so that he can discipline or he can refine his people so that they can be used for the greater good. But really, why get angry? Why should God get angry? I mean, here's what it's about. You see, you only count what's yours. Nobody counts what's other people's because we don't care. So David wants to do a count because he says that they are his people, but they're not his people. The Israelites are still God's chosen people. In Exodus, when God told Moses, he says, when you take a census of the Israelites to count them, each one has to pay the Lord a ransom for his life at the time that he is counted. Then no plague will come on them when you number them. So it's crazy that as a punishment for David's census is a plague that overtakes Israel, that kills 70,000 people. But then you ask yourself, why punish everyone? It's David's fault. Why should everybody have to be punished? Why should 70,000 people die? I don't know. Maybe it's because Israel's far from perfect. Maybe it's because they have rebelled so many times that, they didn't die before. Now it's catching up to them. Maybe it's a lesson for Israel. And maybe it's a lesson for us as well, that for us to understand that when a leader falls, everybody falls. We all fail along with that. And so as we see at the end of the chapter, God's grieved, because of the things that were happening to the people. In fact, he stops the punishment there at the threshing floor. So even in God's rebuke, he still shows love and mercy, because he could have kept going, but he stopped. So our challenge is to do our best, to follow God's principles, not because they're God's principles, but because they benefit us, okay? And it gives us an opportunity to worship him. That's the end of 2 Samuel. Tomorrow we start with the Kings. Have a great day.